All right. Well, welcome to 24/7's 2022 Job Market Compensation and Benefits webinar. I'm Celeste Gudas. I'm the founder of 24/7. And boy, what a time we're in. Not only do we have an incredibly tight talent market, we are really witnessing dramatic changes in the way we work. And while, COVID was certainly an accelerator to that, and all those also changing demographics and technology, are also fueling the change. But, if you hear the buzzy term, the future of work, we are in it now, and it's going to be some ride. So buckle up. For the last 15 years, 24/7 has been surveying a group of folks in the industry quarterly, and we create our job market report, and that's really to give candidates and clients a sense of what's happening in the marketplace so they can better position themselves. And this quarter, as you can imagine, the area we're looking at was really compensation and benefits. So, the findings are interesting, and we're really looking forward to presenting those to you. But I think what's going to be more interesting about this webinar is really hearing, anecdotally what we're seeing in the market, what we're seeing, talking to hundreds of clients. So, and hopefully that gives you some insight in how to position yourselves, whether you're a candidate or a hiring manager in the market. So, about this year, again, no surprise that, it's really about hiring talent. And the key theme is that talent is in the driver's seat. I think we all know that, I don't want to call it a war zone, but we've been out in the trenches. So, we're living and breathing it. But today's talent really has more choice as to where they want to work, how they want to work, and in some cases, even when they want to work. So that means it's going to take more flexibility, more effort, to keep the best paid people, to retain them, and then to attract highly skilled employees to join your team. So, and while compensation continues to dominate the narrative, but benefits, work-life balance, and really flexibility, but also being tuned into your employees and, being tuned into them almost on an individual and personal basis. They want to be valued, and they also want to be developed. So all this makes for a very interesting mix in the hiring scene today. So just a couple of things, we will send you a link to this webinar, and also you can download our job market report from our website. But if you do have any questions along the way, feel free to put them in the Q&A, and we will get to them if we can. So I'm super happy to have my colleague Lisa Marie Ringus join me today. Lisa is the EVP of Global Client Strategy and Growth at 24/7. And just Lisa and I have been working together for, I don't know, many years, Lisa, several years.
Going on 13. Going on 13, Celeste. But I'm really happy to be here, and I wish we were in person because we seem to do this a lot every single year, and so I will see you soon. Fair enough, but I'm really excited to be here, and thank you all for joining us. Hopefully I can share some perspective in the trenches, working with clients. That's my role at 24/7. So I'm very often spending my days talking to them about the exact data points that we're going to share. I see what's happening in terms of benefits across hundreds of clients, how they're compensating and how they're adjusting to this new way of work. So happy to be here, and thank you, Celeste.
Great to have you, Lisa. So moving along here, the last couple of years have been dominated by the headlines of the Great Resignation. Workers in all industries at every stage of the game are leaving their jobs. And we're now in a 10-month period stretch where there's 4 million people quitting every month. And in fact, in March, 4.5 million people quit. So it seems that the trend continues on. But where are they all going? We know that women left the workforce in some numbers during the pandemic. We know that some people went out to investigate the gig economy. We know some baby boomers retired, and we also know immigration was virtually halted. But all that being said, with unemployment so low, where are the workers? What happened? And so, there's a new term, Lisa, going around, and I'm sure you've heard. It's really called the Great Reshuffling rather than the Great Resignation. And I'm wondering, just by what you're seeing in your everyday life, working with clients and candidates, how you feel about this huge shift going on in the market.
Yeah, well, I think that reshuffling is more apropos to what we're seeing, just in terms of the volume of jobs and the volume of placements that 24/7 is pumping out on a daily basis. They're definitely going to better options, in many cases. And I think as everybody is, just bombarded by the news and what's happening, keep in mind always that the numbers and the statistics that are supported macroly, at a macro level, those are taking into account manufacturing jobs and so forth. Whereas 24/7 is really focused in the digital marketing and creative space, which couldn't be more competitive than what we see. And so talent, simply put, is in the driver's seat. And we see every day in talking to candidates and working with our clients and how difficult it is to get a job open, to close, to actually place, and counter offers and everything that happens in between that process. Talent has simply taken control, over their professional destiny. They've had the time to sit at home, consider sacrifices that they've made both personally and professionally over the last 2 years. And they've had time to realize life outside of the office, making, the hiring process that much more complex. And look, we just had 11.3 million jobs posted in March. So as many people are quitting, there's more jobs coming into the fold. And that turnover, you just have to imagine inside a company what that churn does to the existing employees and taxing on management and leadership. But I think what we see from talent the most is that they've evaluated what matters, and what employer aligns with their values of today and their evolved way that they think about work and their happiness. And employers now are also facing competition from industries they didn't have to consider in years past. So they really have to know a landscape much greater than they ever have. And with more options and opportunities to turn to, this time is kind of it's not even a warning sign anymore, I think. I think the warning signs have passed, that this informed and determined workforce, they simply won't settle. The tactics of higher compensation, which we'll get into, robust benefit packages and flexible work schedules, those are quite frankly just expected from talent. They're no longer just, this is a moment that we're going to see inflated salaries or robust benefits. Like, they're expected. And I think that is here to stay.
Yeah, so I agree, Lisa. I'm going to get us into the survey a little bit here. At the beginning of this year, we talked to over 1,400 professionals in the marketing, creative, and technology roles, but across many different industries. So that's one of the beautiful things about our business is we get to see, from bird's eye view what different industries are really doing and what that landscape's like. But so over half of those surveyed made or influenced hiring and compensation decisions. So if you look at, we're going to move on to the next slide, but I think that does tell in simple terms the story of the talent market right now.
Employers are at a really tough crossroad and they need to act fast, and not every employer can do that, right? So I hold the seat of empathizing both with candidates and employers, when we share these data points, because it's not that easy to react quickly to a market that has just exploded with expectations and competition and all of this. So I think that the flight risk problem goes deeper than just people unhappy or looking for compensation. I think that coupled with the volume of hiring that I mentioned before, there's just a very complex situation to not only retain talent, but attract talent. There's a lot of noise, within every organization. In addition to compensation and the benefits and other factors, I think there are a few other points that are really critical to think about, whether you're somebody, again, evaluating a new opportunity or you're sitting in a hiring decision. but organizational brand and reputation still matter. You know, culture is still king in terms of what an employee is looking for out of their relationship with their work. Turnover, you know, that churn is adding more stress to existing teams. We heard a lot about burnout over the last couple of years. And I think that's still a concern. And we have seen clients adapt to that and take more time and attention and give their teams the time off and allow them to work how they work and where they work in a manner that works best for them, which we see as the most positive. And that the desire for remote work, you know, how are we managing talent, you know, not only, you know, from a productivity standpoint and how are we keeping them engaged, but how are we allowing people to work remote and not have that have an impact positively or negatively on culture, performance, you know, the career growth and professional development. I see clients wrestling with how do they maintain that, you know, rigor of their employment base when everyone is remote, because we've seen in years past, Celeste, as you know, that career growth and stability and opportunity to learn new skills is still hugely important to talent. So again, the employers have to be prepared, and the warning signs are long gone.
Lisa, to that point, do you think that companies are, for the most part, setting their, whether it's remote, hybrid, or in-house, have they set that firmly at this point, or is there a lot of hedging bets still going on as to, you know?
I think there's still some undecided, right? And, you know, unfortunately, we're seeing the C word rise up again, and it's going to change again, potentially. So, you know, I think that what I have seen in the recruitment process when we're working with clients is when you get to the moment where you're not sure what you're doing, you have not made a formal decision, it makes candidates very leery. And I'll give you an example. In one interview that says we are 2 days a week for life, we've decided that everybody's on board from top down in the company. That is something an employee or a potential employee can grasp onto. The statement, we're thinking 2 days, we might go 3, our CEO wants 4, but we really think we might land at 2 to 3, is not the way to go. Because it creates confusion and uncertainty and a lack of trust, quite frankly, by the candidate in that process. Like, they say it's 2 to 3, but I know it's going to be 4, and I don't want 4 days in the office. The companies that we've seen providing the greatest flexibility, and I'll give an example of one client in particular, they've chosen to have 10 days in office. And that 10 days can be chosen by the employee on whatever days they want. And so that hybrid without the lack of flexibility is where things are very undesired.
That's interesting. So I'm going to move along here, but so we saw a lot of, you know, pandemic era cuts in salary and comp, but you know, I think a lot of that has shifted again. You know, our latest numbers in the survey show that 80% of those who were surveyed expect a pay raise this year, and I know that it makes it tricky. I think that one of the things I just want to mention when you're looking at compensation is, earlier I had said this, just look at the broader, you know, when you're looking at a role, look across industries, because there's never been a time like this when candidates have been moving, you know, in between industries and through industries. So, you know, it's really, you have to look at the big picture, not just in your industry. And another thing from my perspective is look at longer term incentives. I mean, we all want to do the sign-on bonus or the year-end bonus, but I do think that, you know, think about stickier long-term incentives such as you know, matching 401k, stock, things that, you know, that they have to vest in, and it's just, again, trying to build on that stickiness, if you would. And if you're a small company and you can't play in the level the salaries, you know, are coming in today, then, you know, I would really talk to your employees. I would really you have other means, it's not easy, but communicating with them, and you can do it, through maybe equity, but if not, really look to your benefits, right? Because, there are ways to make the benefits really, in some places, they're more important than comp to people. So I think that brings us into our next slide, Lisa, really on benefits.
Yeah, there's no question that benefits are still important. Benefits and that conversation with candidates in the process used to be a secondary part of our conversation, right? And as we're working with clients and recruiting for our clients, candidates want to know from our teams upfront, what are the benefits offered? It's the second question after salary. And the third is there remote work? And it may go in different order, but those three are the top questions we get before a candidate likely will even talk to our teams about the company, the role, the opportunity. Those are the three factors that matter. So satisfaction, when you look at that with regards to benefits, I'd say it's fairly lukewarm. A robust and progressive benefits package beyond just healthcare, right? Some of the things that you mentioned, Celeste, other perks, family leave, parental leave, 401k. I mean, all of these things, matter, and when you think about culture and what that draws, that really candidates are looking to, what does their employer brand stand for? How are they contributing? And we also I think it goes without saying, with everything going on in the world, there's been a lot of talk about mental health and, paying attention to your employees and what's their state of mind. And I think it needs to be recognized that very often that's not driven by what's happening inside the organization. It could be driven by things in the world totally beyond our control, that we have to pay attention, that they affect our teams and how they show up and come to work every day. So I think benefits, the overall package, is one of the most, if not the most, desired, viable way to attract and retain talent. As a result, when I'm speaking with a new client, I know exactly what I can say is a good thing about their benefits, where they fall short. And we let them know up front, in the process, that this benefit package is a little below par than what we're seeing. We want you to know that, because it will affect our success in finding the right talent for you. And it's important that we have those conversations, because that's really our role in representing the talent we work with and what they want and what they're looking for. So at the end of the day, I believe companies have a lot of work still to do when it comes to the overall benefits package and how they are meeting their employees' needs.
So picking up on that a bit, I'm really looking at workplace flexibility here, and I think perhaps one of the biggest insights gleaned through the pandemic was how much work people actually got done working remotely, and how productive they were. And I know we've seen that in our own organization. So, even though it has been a tumultuous 2 years, I do think that, if employers can keep an open mind toward workplace flexibility, it's really to their benefit and to, employees' benefit. So here you go, that a majority of the respondents in our survey said the employer offered some sort of remote or hybrid option. But at this point, only 6% reported being back in the office 100%. So I think that's an interesting point. So consider what you're offering, because if you're going back 100%, and only 6% of those we surveyed are doing that, there's the majority of the marketplace is not doing that. And so you're up against that when you're out trying to, get talent. So it has to be, again, you're going to have to give and take to make your, workplace attractive. But I also think that, there's just been such a shift where employees are driving the bus at this point, and I think in terms of going to a hybrid or remote workplace, one of the things that I've been seeing too, and as I'm just talking and just out amongst groups, is really the age and stage factor, and you have to really look at your employees. They're not all the same. They're individuals. They want to be treated like individuals. They have individual needs. So that age and stage experience and tailoring it, for example, Gen Zs, they want to go into the office. I have a daughter who's just out of college and sitting in the bedroom, isn't really cutting it, so she loves going in. In fact, her whole experience changed once they started back on a hybrid model. So I think we hear a lot, and of course we know the onboarding issues, et cetera. But I think if you are going to bring people back, we hear again, make sure that they're meaningfully engaged when they come back, and that you have great collaboration technology for those in the office, not in the office, really employee-centric technology. There's so much there now that the investment is well worth it. And then also, you have to develop your leaders. I think you touched on this. It's hard. It's a different type of management, and we really need, people-centric leadership in the hybrid or remote model, and with really frequent communication. So I think there's, it's work to do to make this hybrid model or the remote model successful. But I do think in the end, as long as you're communicating and in touch with your employees' needs, this is going to be ultimately a win-win for you.
Yeah, I would say, Celeste, like at the end of the day, and the best point you could make, that everybody is individual. No one employee has the same situation as the next, and so it puts the employer and the manager really at the position that they've got to be in charge of infusing the love, back in the work and the passion and the excitement and so forth. And that is, to your point, it's just a totally different skill set to do remotely, and make sure that they're getting what they need, for their professional and their personal development, quite frankly.
Agreed.
Okay, the next. So employers, we talked about this. What do? You've got people to retain, you've got churn in the organization, you've got new jobs to attract new talent into the organization. And I think a key area that could be a gem for employers to kind of find out what's happening inside their organization is to think about their existing talent, just as importantly as they would an incoming, candidate. And almost, we say, re-recruit your talent, talk to them on a regular basis. You've joined the company 2 years ago. What's shifted? What's changed? What are things that we can do to improve? I can't make any promises, but it's important for me to hear from you, as a member of my team, on what is important to you now, because we know that that's evolved, maybe even since the beginning of this year. So that employee satisfaction and evaluating engagement, that love factor that I say, that they have with their jobs is a constant. It's not a one conversation. It's not a quarterly conversation. It is something that you have to stay in front of, and just simply hearing and listening to your employees. It's the greatest barometer of things to come as to whether they stay or they go. And if you're not getting ahead of that, and if any of their mindset has shifted, they're likely already gone and out the door. So there's no better analysis that an employer can have than assessing the needs, desires, the satisfaction, what they're liking and enjoying about their work, what's challenging, is to speak to your existing candidate before you leave. And the bar will continue to rise for what it takes to retain talent and what keeps them satisfied. And so employers need to stay on their toes and stay in front of, their greatest asset, which is the people that sit within the organization already.
Totally agree, Lisa. So I just want to touch on something. For the first time, 24/7 surveyed the market to better understand how talent is approaching the side hustle. We hear a lot about gig work and side hustles, but I was really surprised that 32% of full-time employees taking on freelance projects in the last year. It was a higher number than I expected. And I really feel that employees no longer feel owned by a company. It's their brand, and they're trying different things. And sometimes it seemed like it might've been for comp, but most of them thought their salaries were adequate, and they were doing it for passion or projects to develop new skills, testing the waters to really join the gig economy. And we know the gig economy is growing. All kinds of stats projected out, is just a big growth sector. So, but I do think it kind of makes things interesting for those of you that are hiring managers and leaders in companies as to confidentiality. and just boundaries, right? Because it's something, there was always this sort of, you can't really go out beyond our cohesive group here. So anyway, I think that's interesting. I don't think we have to really dwell on this, but I wanted to bring it up and kind of highlight it. So we could consider that in the total package of where the future of work is going. So
now what? So if you're a job seeker, if you're in the market, and once you actually have the opportunity to download our full report and see some of the data points and more of the numbers than what we've shared or discussed today, and we will continue to do this for you throughout the year. But so now what? So what would my advice be, if you're in the seat, looking for a new job? The first would be to set your priorities and clearly evaluate what matters to you most. Make that list, but be realistic about that list. More importantly, be prepared to articulate that in the recruitment process. Ask the right questions to get to the answers and the factors that are most important to you. Don't wait for the interview process to tell you. You have to be able to be prepared and articulate things that matter to you and take a real stock check. Is this employer going to meet my most critical and important needs? And if they're not, move on. There's another opportunity. Be willing to consider, where you might compromise, and be realistic about those expectations. I mean, I always say to candidates, create a list of the 10 things most important to you and whittle that down to 6, because there's not going to be 20 opportunities that meet all 10 factors. There might be 2. But the job you really want, you need to be flexible in some of those expectations that you have of what's most important to you. And for employers, they need to move fast. They simply just have to move fast. They need to ensure that their hiring process is set up to clearly convey culture, benefits, compensation, and flexible work life. What is it like to work at our company, and what do we bring to the table? And I have to remind candidates and clients that they both equally have to sell themselves in the interview process, mostly to the client. They have to be prepared to attract that candidate, make a connection, but give them the promise of what it will be like once that candidate joins the company. And then any delay or wavering in that communication across some of these important factors, they're already gone and out the door and on to the next opportunity. So speed, clarity, clear communication, about what the company can deliver is really critical in the interview and recruitment process today.
Yeah, and I'm just going to pick up on that point, certainly from the hiring manager standpoint. You talk about acting swiftly, but I really just in your recruiting process, treat your candidates as though they're customers. I mean, even all of us as consumers, you don't want to wait on the phone, in a line for your number 14, so we all want that specialized attention. And so I think, and just make sure, some tactical stuff, like, is your application and interview process friendly and welcoming and please digital, and do you again respond quickly, swiftly? We've lost candidates when the client just isn't moving quickly enough. And again, Lisa spoke to this, but you got to leverage your brand, really make sure about the why in it. Why? What's the mission? Show excitement for the role and your candidate's interest in that role. So it's really paying attention, the big picture, and then back down to tactical details. And in terms of retention, I think we've talked a lot about really individualizing, how you look at your employees. They want internal mobility. They want, employee-centric technology. Again, I think Lisa touched on this. Talk to your employees. You'll get the buzz. You'll hear what they're thinking. You'll hear what they're thinking ahead of time, and be able to, really get out in front to give your brand or your organization a head start in this very intense talent market. So.
Yes, Celeste, the other thing that we should mention also, because this comes up and we are in it every day, but that commitment to diversity and inclusion has to be a part of that interview process, and showing any candidate coming through the door, that your organization has a commitment to diversity and inclusion. And we are seeing more and more candidates ask that, and you've got to be prepared to, share your commitment, what you're doing as an organization. And that's really just part of building that culture, of what it is like, to work here and what they can experience, from a diversity and inclusion standpoint.
So important. You're absolutely right. And it's not a moment in time. It needs to be an evolution within organizations, and people need to feel it and see it. And so I agree with that, Lisa. So in closing, it's 1:30. That I just hope you found this information helpful and armed you to help navigate this great reshuffle. A little bit about 24/7 and our family of companies. We're a global specialized recruitment firm placing top full-time and freelance talent. We work with leading brands and agencies filling roles in the marketing, communication, digital, creative, and technology space. But most really exciting is in the last 2 years, we've grown our family of companies to include specialized subsidiaries. We have the Sage Group, Creatus, Antenna, and Simplicity Consulting. All these organizations offer unique talent solutions to really help you build out your marketing and digital and creative teams. And we have such tremendous talent. We are just thrilled to be working with these organizations. And we're really dominating the world in marketing, creative, and digital recruitment. So on top of that, we have a peer-to-peer networking. We've built a peer-to-peer networking organization called Marketers That Matter. And it's for senior level marketing executives to really future-proof themselves and their teams with just innovation and insights into what's current in marketing. So please reach out if you're interested in that as well. So again, thank you so much for your time. I know we had a couple questions, but Lisa, maybe we could stay on for a couple minutes if you can.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. So one of the questions that came through, and thank you, is do we have an example of clients that are getting the benefits right? And I'm happy to just throw a couple of examples of where we see, and when I say a robust, progressive, benefits package, it's certainly the healthcare that they're covering, a significant portion of that healthcare cost, that's important to candidates. And that varies certainly, but they've got to have some portion of that healthcare cost, contributed to by the employer. The time off, the paid time off, I think we sometimes feel, I know in management that almost went away because we're all working from home, but the candidates want to hear that. They want to know exactly what the PTO policy is and what's the vacation. And again, that's a little bit of that trust factor of, is this really flexible or not? So I think we see that as being very, very important to candidates. And then, the fringe, I think Celeste touched upon earlier, whether it's stock options or matching 401k, those are becoming increasingly attractive, for candidates to see in a benefits package. But then it's really the fringe, is there a volunteer day that we give you to take off? Are we giving you, we've seen clients give stipends, to the point of, not one, one size fits all in terms of treating your employees as individuals, but here's a stipend that you can use for yourself to do something, whether it's a massage or go buy yourself a nice dinner or something that kind of meets them, kind of in what's most important to them. So those flexibility benefits and things that allow employees to kind of pick and choose from a menu, I think are increasingly, attractive to candidates. And then Celeste, the other question that came through, is someone that's not so happy due to management issues and concerned really about what to do if they made a change and would they get the same kind of value add. It's a tough question to answer, quite frankly, because, if I've been in management positions where I didn't like management, not at 24/7, but I'm old in my career. And when I've been in those situations, quite frankly, it's up to me to get out and explore other options and then evaluate, in the interview process, asking the right questions, what is the charge of management here? How do you like to manage people? what type of candidates work best with your management style? I mean, those are the types of questions that you should be asking. And I always encourage everybody, and I know it's scary, but if you're unhappy, have a conversation. You know, you're either going to already leave the company, so you do have to some degree a responsibility to the company and to yourself to try to fix it. So try and host a proactive conversation. If it's not with a direct manager, find somebody else that's willing to speak with you. But we know candidates leave companies because of bad management, right? That's still probably the number one reason. So it's tough to say. You just have to get out there and evaluate other options and make sure that that's critical, you know, in your interview process.
Yeah, and I just want to add, you know, I think it is a good moment to make a change from, you know, just the standpoint of what's happening in the world, and companies, some of them are making changes to go along with these forces happening in the marketplace, and others are holding back. And so I think that if ever there was a time where you would get the value in the marketplace, this could be it. But I agree with Lisa, you know, weigh your options and see if you can make some changes where you are. But anyway, it's just a crazy market where you're in the driver's seat. Don't forget that. So, all right. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Lisa.
Thank you,
So
Celeste, and happy Cinco de Mayo to everyone. Enjoy your margaritas later today.
Yeah.
And thank you to everyone who joined, and to our team at 24/7 to help us pull this off.
Oh yeah, thanks to the whole marketing team. And just a reminder, you know, link to this webinar recording will be emailed. You can share it with your teams. You can also find the 2022 Comp and Benefits report we referenced on our website, the 247talent.com. So thanks very much, everyone, and thanks for hanging in there with us a few extra minutes.